If you've been glancing at the headlines, you'd think the 2025 stock market is absolutely on fire. But what if I told you that incredible strength is, well, it's kind of an illusion, that it's all being held up by just a handful of giant companies? Today, we're going to peel back the layers and get to the truth behind this rally. It's really a tale of two markets, where a few titans are carrying almost everyone else. So here's the big number you're seeing everywhere, plus 12%. That's how much the S&P 500, the big benchmark for the US stock market, is up this year. And look, in any normal year, a gain like that would be cause for celebration. It signals a healthy, booming economy, right? Well, here's where it gets interesting. That really impressive number is actually hiding a much more complicated and honestly a much weaker reality for most companies out there. The market isn't just rising on its own. It's being dragged, almost kicking and screaming upwards by a very small and very, very powerful group.
So, who are these market titans? Well, they've been given a pretty cool nickname, the Magnificent Seven. And understanding who they are and what they're doing is the absolute key to solving this whole market mystery.
Yeah, you know every single one of these names. Apple, Microsoft, Google, Amazon, Nvidia, Meta, and Tesla. They're the giants, the household names that are completely at the forefront of this tech and AI boom. I mean, from the phone you're holding to the chips powering the AI revolution, these 7 companies are dominating not just the conversation, but the market itself. So you might be asking, how is it even possible for just 7 companies to have such a huge impact? It's not magic, I promise. It all comes down to how the stock market is actually built.
And here it is. This is the secret sauce. The S&P 500 is what's called a market cap weighted index. Just think of it like a giant seesaw. The heavier a company is, and by heavy I mean the bigger its total stock value, the more power it has to move the entire index up or down. So a 1% move in a giant like Microsoft has a way, way bigger effect than a 1% move in a much smaller company.
And just look at how much weight we're talking about here. The Magnificent Seven now make up roughly 1/3 of the entire value of the S&P 500. Just let that sink in for a second. We've got 7 companies on one side of the scale and the other 493 on the other. It's an incredible imbalance. Now this is where the performance gap just becomes jaw-dropping. Look at that first bar. Over the last couple of years, the Magnificent Seven as a group have surged an incredible 156%. And the other 493 companies? Well, they're up a respectable 25%, but that looks tiny in comparison, doesn't it? This right here is the tale of two markets. And here's the real punchline. If you were to just take those 7 companies out of the equation, the rest of the market, what some people are calling the S&P 493, has barely budged this year. It's almost flat. The entire rocket ship trajectory of the market is coming from just those 7 stocks breaking away from the pack. The strength we see in the headlines, it's not a broad recovery. It's the incredible performance of just 7 stocks. But a divide this huge doesn't happen overnight. To really get how we got here, we've got to rewind a bit and look at the major economic forces that, over the past few years, have basically split the market into 2 totally different camps. It's really been a perfect storm. It all kind of started back in 2019 with trade wars hitting old-school manufacturers. Then, of course, the pandemic hit, which massively accelerated our shift to a digital life, a huge, huge win for big tech. Then, in 2022, high interest rates started squeezing smaller companies, and then came the final rocket fuel, the AI gold rush, which just sent a tidal wave of investor money pouring into those tech giants. I love this analogy from economist Mark Zandi. He described this perfectly as a story of tailwinds and headwinds. As you can see, big tech is just riding this powerful tailwind of AI, pushing them higher and higher. At the exact same time, a lot of traditional companies are fighting a headwind of de-globalization, struggling with things like higher costs. It's like they're living in 2 completely different economic worlds. Okay, so why does any of this matter to you? Because a market that's this top-heavy isn't just some interesting little fact. It carries some very real risks, both for the economy and for your investments. First off, this rally is pretty fragile. I mean, if these few leaders stumble, the whole market could take a big hit. Second, it creates this weird disconnect where the stock market looks fantastic, but back on Main Street, a lot of businesses are really struggling. Then you've got growing fears of an AI bubble. And maybe most importantly for you, if you own an S&P 500 index fund in your 401k, you're way less diversified than you probably think you are. This quote from Torsten Sloke at Apollo Global Management just hits the nail on the head. He says, "There is no diversification. It is all the AI story now. Think about that. When one single theme, one single idea, is driving everything, that safety net we're supposed to have from diversification, it just kind of vanishes. The entire market has placed this massive, concentrated bet on a single story.
So, all of this brings us to the most important question of all, right? What happens now? Where does the market possibly go from here?
When you really boil it down, there are two main paths forward from here. The optimistic one is that the rally broadens. That's where the rest of the market, those other 493 companies, finally start to catch up as the benefits of AI spread and the whole economy gets stronger. The other path, the more pessimistic one, is that the leaders falter. The AI hype cools off, and those 7 rockets fall back to Earth, pulling the entire market down with them.
And that leaves us with the million-dollar question for anyone watching the economy. Will the rest of the market finally join the party? Or is this it? Is this the new normal? A world where the fate of the entire market rests on the shoulders of just a handful of magnificent companies?